To aliens, they're monsters. To humans, they're good boys. Reaches its dramatic crescendo when alien linguist Pipa courageously approaches Rex despite her evolutionary fear. In a breathtaking moment of cross-species understanding, Rex deliberately exposes his vulnerable neck, a universal canine peace signal, while Pipa touches his fur. He's making himself vulnerable. To reassure me, she realizes, forever bridging the galactic divide between predator and prey. The luminous blue-green atmosphere of Earth shimmered against the viewing port of the Serenity's edge, as Captain Zexai adjusted his crystalline form to better appreciate the spectacle. After 47 first contact missions across the galaxy, one might expect the wonder to fade, but each new world held its own unique beauty. Earth, with its vast oceans and swirling cloud patterns, was particularly striking. "Captain, preliminary atmospheric readings are complete," announced Dr. Kree, the ship's chief xenobiologist. Her 6 tentacles worked in perfect synchrony across the control panel, each appendage executing precise movements with practiced efficiency. Nitrogen-oxygen mix, as expected, suitable for most of our crew without supplementation. Zexai's crystalline structure shifted slightly, a manifestation of his satisfaction. "Excellent. And communications? We've detected their primitive radio signals and satellite networks," replied Vulpan, the communications specialist. His fur rippled with subtle blue bioluminescent patterns, a sign of excitement among his species. "They appear to be expecting us, based on their transmissions. The designated landing site is prepared." "Very well," Zexai said, his voice resonating with a melodic quality that came from the vibration of his crystalline body. "This is Contact Mission 48 for our vessel. But remember, for these humans, this is their first. Let us make it memorable, for the right reasons." As the Serenity's Edge began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, thousands of miles below, at Peterson Space Command Base in Colorado, Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy paced nervously across the polished floor of the command center. At 35, with dark hair beginning to gray at the temples, and the focused intensity of someone who had dedicated his life to preparing for this moment, Jake represented humanity's carefully selected diplomatic front line. "They're entering the mesosphere now," announced a technician from behind a wall of monitors. "Trajectory is exactly as planned." Jake nodded, then glanced down at his companion, a German shepherd with intelligent eyes and an alert posture. "Well, Rex, looks like we're really doing this." He scratched behind the dog's ears, drawing comfort from the familiar gesture. Rex had been his partner through 3 tours in international peacekeeping missions before they'd both been reassigned to this unprecedented diplomatic role. "I still think bringing service animals to a first contact is an unnecessary risk," said Colonel Wright, his voice tight with disapproval. "We know nothing about how these beings might react to Earth's fauna." "With all due respect, Colonel," countered Dr. Lisa Chang as she entered the room with her own companion, an enormous Saint Bernard named Bear, plodding faithfully beside her. "The psychological research is clear. The presence of therapy and service animals reduces stress hormones and promotes positive social interaction. Besides, the Federation's advance messages specifically requested examples of Earth's diverse life forms." "They were probably expecting samples in jars, not living predators," Wright muttered. Jake suppressed a smile. "Rex and Bear aren't just random animals, sir. They're highly trained service dogs with perfect temperaments. Rex here has more diplomatic experience than half our team. 3 international peacekeeping missions where he helped break the ice with local populations. And Bear has worked with trauma patients for years," added Dr. Chang, her hand resting on the massive dog's head. "If anyone can project non-threatening friendliness across species barriers, it's him." Colonel Wright looked unconvinced, but General Rodriguez, the overall mission commander, stepped in with a tone of finality. The decision's been made, Colonel. The psychological team believes that demonstrating our peaceful coexistence with other Earth species will help establish our credentials as a cooperative civilization. Besides, he added with a wry smile, who doesn't love dogs? Far above them, aboard the Serenity's edge, similar preparations were underway. Zexai watched as his crew gathered the carefully selected gifts and scientific equipment for the first meeting with humans. Dr. Kree, your assessment of these humans based on our observations? Zexai asked. The xenobiologist's tentacles curled thoughtfully. Technologically, they're in early space development, roughly type 0.7 on the Kardashev scale. Socially complex, with multiple governance systems. They appear to have moved beyond their most destructive territorial conflicts, though smaller skirmishes persist. Overall, fairly typical for a species at this development stage. Zexai nodded, his crystalline structure catching the light. And biologically? Carbon-based, bilateral symmetry, endoskeletal. Dr. Kree continued. Omnivorous, but with a curious tendency toward emotional bonding with other species. Our long-range observations detected them living alongside smaller organisms in their dwellings, possibly domesticated food sources or symbiotic relationships. First Officer Trax, a towering insectoid being with iridescent compound eyes, joined the conversation. The Federation Council is particularly interested in their potential for integration. After the Zoltan incident, we need success stories. Zexai's structure dimmed slightly at the mention of the Zoltan, a race whose violent tendencies had necessitated containment rather than welcome into the galactic community. We won't prejudge them based on superficial similarities to other species. Each civilization deserves fair assessment. Of course, Captain, Trax clicked apologetically. I merely meant to emphasize the importance of this mission. Understood, Zexai responded, his tone warming. Now, let's review our approach one final time. Cultural sensitivity is paramount. We know from our observations that humans have diverse customs. Our translator algorithms have processed their major languages, but meanings can be lost. Approach with openness, avoid assumptions, and remember, we represent not just ourselves, but all Federation species. The ship continued its controlled descent, the blue sky outside the viewports darkening to indigo as the sun set over the American continent. On the ground, the landing site, a specially prepared field adjacent to Peterson Space Command Base, was illuminated with powerful lights that would guide the vessel in. Military personnel, scientists, diplomats, and a small contingent of press stood at a safe distance, waiting for humanity's first official meeting with extraterrestrial intelligence. Jake checked his uniform one last time, then glanced at Dr. Chang. Nervous, he asked quietly. She offered a tight smile. Terrified. You? Just trying not to think about the fact that this moment will be in history books forever, he replied with a strained laugh. No pressure. The air around them began to vibrate as the alien ship descended through the last layers of atmosphere. It was sleek and otherworldly, not the flying saucer of popular imagination, but something more organic in appearance, with flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to absorb and redirect light in unexpected ways. It's beautiful, Dr. Chang whispered. Rex and Bear, both trained to remain calm in extraordinary circumstances, watched the approaching craft with alert interest. Their ears were forward, tails relaxed, a good sign that they weren't feeling threatened. General Rodriguez stepped forward to stand beside Jake and Dr. Chang. Remember the protocol. No sudden movements. Wait for them to initiate communication. The translators should handle the language barrier, but be prepared for misunderstandings. Jake nodded, placing his hand on Rex's head for reassurance. The dog looked up at him with complete trust, and Jake felt a surge of confidence. They'd face this historic moment together, as they had faced everything else. The ship settled onto the landing pad with barely a sound, its propulsion system operating on principles human science had yet to discover. A hush fell over the assembled crowd as a section of the vessel's hull began to reconfigure itself, flowing like liquid metal to form an opening. A ramp extended from the ship to the ground, and the first of the alien visitors emerged into Earth's twilight. Captain Zexai led the Federation delegation, his crystalline form catching and refracting the landing lights in a dazzling display. Behind him came Dr. Kree, her tentacles now adorned with formal ceremonial bands, and Vulpan, whose fur glowed with subtle patterns that reflected his emotional state. Several other crew members of various species followed, some bipedal, others moving on multiple limbs or floating just above the ground. The human delegation stepped forward, led by General Rodriguez, with Jake, Dr. Chang, and their canine companions just behind. The moment was solemn, weighted with historic significance. And then everything went wrong. Rex and Bear, trained to be friendly ambassadors, saw the new visitors and did what sociable, well-adjusted dogs do when encountering new friends. They trotted forward, tails wagging enthusiastically, ears perked up in greeting. The reaction from the Federation delegation was instantaneous and catastrophic. Dr. Kree's tentacles contracted violently, her skin flashing warning colors. Vulpan emitted a high-pitched squeal of terror, his fur bristling with alarm patterns. Even the stoic Captain Zexai's crystalline form contracted defensively, vibrating at a frequency that produced an unsettling hum. "Predators!" Vulpan shrieked, the translator rendering his alarm into English. "They've brought predators!" The Federation crew backed rapidly toward their ship, several members producing what appeared to be defensive technology. Jake and Dr. Chang reacted quickly, calling their dogs back to their sides, but the damage was done. "We come in peace," General Rodriguez called out, raising his empty hands. "These are domesticated animals, companions, not threats." But the Federation delegation wasn't listening. They retreated into their ship, the entrance sealing behind them with fluid rapidity. Within moments, the vessel's propulsion system engaged, and the Serenity's edge rose into the darkening sky with alarming speed. "What the hell just happened?" Colonel Wright demanded, rounding on Jake and Dr. Chang. "Did your dogs just sabotage humanity's first contact?" Jake stared up at the rapidly diminishing light of the alien ship, his stomach sinking. "They were just being friendly." Dr. Chang knelt beside Bear, who looked utterly confused by the turn of events. How could they possibly perceive these two as threats? They're trained therapy animals. "To us, they're good boys," General Rodriguez said grimly, watching the alien ship disappear into the night sky. "But to them, apparently, they're monsters." Aboard the rapidly ascending Serenity's Edge, chaos reigned on the bridge. Captain Zexai had regained his composure, but many of the crew remained in states of alarm. "Secure distress signal to Federation headquarters," Zexai ordered, his voice resonating with urgency. "Inform them that humans maintain control of apex predators and appear to have developed methods to subjugate them for their purposes." The creatures approached with dominant postures, Dr. Kree reported, her tentacles still quivering. They displayed all the hallmarks of hunt behavior: forward-facing eyes, exposed teeth, direct approach pattern. "And the humans controlled them with merely verbal commands," added Vulpan, his fur still pulsing with distress patterns. "They've clearly developed some form of mental domination over these predator species." First Officer Trax's compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting. "This changes our assessment significantly. A species that can dominate apex predators and bend them to their will represents a potential security concern for the Federation." Zexai's crystalline structure pulsed with thoughtful patterns. "Let's not rush to judgment. Many spacefaring species have complex relationships with the fauna of their home worlds. But none maintain predators as companions," countered Trax. "This suggests a troubling psychology, one that sees domination as natural." Dr. Kree's tentacles gestured toward the data screens. The biological readings I captured are concerning. These creatures, I believe the humans call them dogs, are descended from pack hunters with killing capacity far exceeding the humans themselves. Yet the humans appeared to control them with mere vocalizations. The discussion was interrupted as a communication from Federation headquarters appeared on the main screen. Admiral Korak, a massive entity composed of interconnected coral-like structures, regarded them with the pulsing bioluminescence that indicated concern. Captain Zexai, we've received your emergency transmission. Explain the situation. Zexai related the events of the aborted first contact, while Dr. Kree transmitted the biological data she had gathered. As the Admiral absorbed this information, the living coral that comprised his form darkened in what the crew recognized as grave concern. "This is indeed troubling," Admiral Korak said finally. "A species that maintains control over predators may view the galaxy through a lens of domination rather than cooperation. The Federation Council will need to reassess our approach." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Zexai asked. "Return to neutral space at the edge of their solar system. We will dispatch additional ships to your location while we determine how to proceed. If these humans can control biological weapons with such facility, we must consider the possibility that they represent a more significant threat than initially assessed." As the transmission ended, Zexai turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral. Set course for the Kuiper Belt region. We'll maintain observation from a safe distance while the Federation deliberates." "Captain," ventured Pipa, a junior xenolinguist from the Ferali species. Her small stature and large, sensitive eyes reflected her people's evolutionary history as a prey species. "If I may offer a different perspective." Zexai gestured for her to continue, his crystalline structure shifting to a more receptive configuration. "I've been studying the human communications we've intercepted," Pipa said, her voice soft but steady. "Their relationship with these dogs appears more complex than simple domination. There are indicators of mutual affection, even interdependence." "Affection? For predators?" Vulpan's fur rippled with disbelief. "It's unprecedented." "I know," Pipa acknowledged. "But the linguistic patterns they use when referring to these creatures contain the same emotional markers they use for their own offspring." Dr. Kree's tentacles waved dismissively. "A psychological aberration, perhaps, or anthropomorphism of a subjugated species." "Perhaps," Pipa conceded. "But shouldn't we gather more data before reaching conclusions? Our mission is to understand, not to judge based on our own biological perspectives." Zexai considered this. "Your point is noted, Specialist Pipa. We will include your linguistic analysis in our report to Federation headquarters. However, for now, our orders stand. We retreat to safe distance and await reinforcement." As the Serenity's Edge accelerated away from Earth, Pipa returned to her station, but her thoughts remained troubled. There was something about the interaction she had witnessed, something in the body language of both humans and their canine companions, that didn't align with a relationship of dominance and subjugation. She resolved to dig deeper into the wealth of human communications the ship had been collecting. There was more to this story, she was certain. Back on Earth, the emergency session of the International First Contact Committee had been in progress for hours. Representatives from major world governments, military leaders, xenobiologists, and cultural experts sat around a massive table, faces grim as they reviewed the disastrous first meeting. They were terrified of the dogs, Jake explained for what felt like the 100th time. Not aggressive, not angry, genuinely terrified. Rex and Bear weren't even barking or growling. They were just being friendly. "Could it be that they perceived the dog's behavior differently?" suggested Professor Torres, a leading xenobiologist. "We know that body language can have dramatically different meanings across cultures, even here on Earth." Perhaps what we read as friendly reads as threatening to them. Or perhaps, Colonel Wright interjected, they recognized predators when they saw them. Many of the alien delegates appeared to have evolved from prey species. Those compound eyes, tentacles, defensive postures, classic prey adaptations. Dr. Chang nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. If their evolutionary history is primarily as prey rather than predators, they might be hardwired to fear anything with forward-facing eyes and visible teeth. So where does that leave us? Asked the Chinese representative. They've fled our system and cut communication. How do we re-establish contact and explain? General Rodriguez studied the satellite data showing the alien vessel's position at the edge of the solar system. They haven't left entirely. They're maintaining position just beyond Pluto's orbit, and they've been joined by 2 additional ships of similar design. A murmur of concern rippled through the room. That doesn't sound like they're simply frightened, said the Russian diplomat. That sounds like they're considering us a threat and preparing accordingly. We need to send a message, Jake said firmly. Explain the relationship between humans and dogs. Show them that it's not about domination or weapons. It's companionship, symbiosis. And how do you propose we do that? Colonel Wright asked skeptically. Our most advanced communication technology can barely reach them at that distance, and they're not responding to conventional signals. We use the International Space Station, Dr. Chang suggested. It's the most visible demonstration of our technological capabilities, and it's already equipped with powerful communication arrays. We can send a delegation there, including canine representatives, and broadcast detailed explanations of human-canine coevolution and partnership. You want to send dogs to space to make a point? Colonel Wright's tone made his opinion of this idea clear. Dogs have been going to space since the 1950s, Colonel, Jake pointed out. And yes, I think seeing the reality of our relationship with them, up close, in a controlled environment, might help them understand. After hours of debate, a plan began to take shape. The International Space Station would be repurposed as a neutral meeting ground. A carefully selected team of human representatives, along with a small group of service and therapy dogs, would be sent up to demonstrate the true nature of the human-canine bond. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels would remain open, broadcasting messages of peace and explanation on all frequencies the alien vessels might be monitoring. As the meeting adjourned, Jake found Dr. Chang in the corridor, Bear sitting patiently at her side. Do you really think this will work? He asked quietly. She sighed, absently stroking Bear's massive head. I don't know, but I do know that fear comes from misunderstanding, and the only cure for misunderstanding is communication. If we can show them what these animals really mean to us. She looked down at Bear, whose soulful eyes gazed back with complete trust. Well, who could see this face and still think monster? Jake smiled faintly. Let's hope they can see what we see. Aboard the Serenity's Edge, now stationed at the edge of Earth's solar system, alongside the newly arrived Federation vessels, Harmonious Accord and Stellar Diplomat. Pipa had been granted permission to continue her analysis of human communications. Captain Zexai, despite the prevailing concern about human intentions, recognized the value of gathering all possible information before the Federation Council made its final determination. Pipa sat in her small research station, surrounded by data streams and translation matrices. Her large eyes, evolved for detecting the slightest movement that might signal danger on her homeworld, now scanned through thousands of human images, videos, and text communications focusing on their relationship with dogs. What she found challenged everything the Federation had initially concluded. Captain, she said, entering the bridge after 3 full cycles of research, I believe we may have fundamentally misunderstood the human-canine relationship. Zexai turned his crystalline form toward her, light refracting through his structure in patterns that indicated attentive interest. Explain, specialist. Pipa activated the main display, showing a series of images and video clips she had compiled. These creatures, dogs, began as predators. Yes. But over thousands of years, they've co-evolved with humans through a process humans call domestication. It appears to be a mutual adaptation, not subjugation. The images showed humans and dogs in various situations, working together, playing, sleeping side by side, even what appeared to be healing contexts. The biochemical data is particularly revealing. Pipa continued. When humans interact with these animals, both species produce hormones associated with bonding and trust: oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. The same neurochemical responses they show toward their own offspring. Dr. Cree moved closer, her tentacles extended in scientific curiosity. That's unprecedented. Cross-species bonding at a neurochemical level? More than that, Pipa said. The vocal patterns humans use with these animals, what we initially interpreted as command structures, contain the same sonic elements they use for comfort communication with their young. And the animals respond not out of fear, but with similar neurochemical changes indicating positive emotional states. Captain Zexai studied the data, his crystalline structure shifting in thoughtful patterns. This is certainly intriguing, but it doesn't change the fact that humans maintain control over predator species with natural weapons capabilities. With respect, Captain, I believe it does, Pipa countered. If this relationship is based on mutual benefit and bonding rather than domination, it suggests a fundamentally different psychology than we initially assumed. It may even indicate an unusual capacity for empathy and cross-species cooperation, traits the Federation values highly. First Officer Trax's compound eyes reflected the changing images on the screen. Even if what you say is true, Specialist, the fact remains that humans have molded a predator species to serve their purposes. The ethical implications are complex, Pipa finished for him. But no more so than many relationships we accept within the Federation. The symbiosis between the Noor and the light harvesters of Gamma Ceti, for instance, or the domestication practices of the Brel. The bridge fell silent as the crew considered this perspective. Finally, Admiral Korak's voice came through the communication system. The Admiral had been monitoring the discussion from the flagship Harmonious Accord. Specialist Pipa presents interesting data. The Admiral's coral structure pulsed with thoughtful bioluminescence. However, we cannot base Federation security decisions on theoretical cultural analysis alone. We need direct evidence. The humans have been broadcasting continuously since our departure, Vulpan reported. They're requesting a second meeting aboard their orbital habitat. They specifically mention wanting to demonstrate their relationship with these dogs in a controlled environment. Admiral Korak's coral segments shifted in what the crew recognized as careful deliberation. This could be an opportunity to gather more definitive information. Captain Zexai, prepare a small delegation. You will meet with the humans on their space station, with appropriate security measures. Specialist Pipa, given your insights into this matter, you will join the delegation as cultural interpreter. Pipa's large eyes widened in surprise. As a junior specialist and a member of a physically vulnerable species, she rarely participated in direct contact missions. Admiral, are you certain? Captain Zexai asked, his crystalline form vibrating with concern. Specialist Pipa has limited field experience. Precisely why she should go, Admiral Korak responded. Her perspective as a member of a prey species, combined with her unprejudiced analysis, makes her uniquely qualified. Sometimes, Captain, we need fresh eyes to see past our own preconceptions. And so it was decided. A small delegation would travel to Earth's orbital station in a heavily shielded shuttle. They would observe and interact with the humans and their canine companions in the controlled environment of space, where both species would be on neutral ground. As Pipa prepared for the mission, she felt the conflicting pull of her instinctive caution and her scientific curiosity. Her species, the Ferali, had evolved as small, vulnerable prey animals on a world of numerous predators. Their large eyes, sensitive hearing, and natural timidity had kept them alive until intelligence and technology had allowed them to transcend their biological limitations. Yet, the old instincts remained, whispering caution. "Are you certain you're prepared for this assignment?" Dr. Cree asked as they boarded the shuttle. Her tentacles moved in patterns that expressed professional concern. "You'll be in close proximity to multiple predator species." Pipa adjusted her environmental suit, designed to protect her sensitive systems from potential contaminants. "I've studied the data extensively. Doctor, these dogs show no predatory behavior patterns toward potential social allies. And the opportunity to observe this relationship firsthand is too valuable to miss." "Your scientific dedication is commendable," Dr. Cree acknowledged, "but don't allow it to override your instincts for self-preservation." Captain Zexai joined them, his crystalline form now compressed into a more streamlined configuration for the shuttle journey. "Remember, our primary objective is information gathering. We observe, we analyze, but we maintain safe distance and defensive capabilities at all times." The shuttle departed the Serenity's edge, with the small delegation aboard: Captain Zexai, Dr. Cree, Pipa, and 2 security specialists from the Braxian species, whose heavily armored exoskeletons and natural defensive capabilities made them ideal protectors. As they approached Earth's orbital station, Pipa gazed through the viewing port at the blue planet below, wondering what insights awaited them. On the International Space Station, now temporarily renamed Unity for the diplomatic mission, Jake Murphy and Dr. Chang made final preparations. They had been joined by representatives from several other nations, as well as a carefully selected group of service and therapy dogs, Rex and Bear, naturally, but also Blaze, a fire rescue dog, Duke, a veteran police K9, and Stella, a seizure alert dog. "The isolation chamber is ready," reported the station commander. "Transparent barriers, separate environmental systems, full communication capability. They can see and hear us. We can see and hear them. But no physical contact until both sides agree it's safe." Jake nodded, adjusting Rex's special space harness. The dogs had adapted remarkably well to the microgravity environment after their training on Earth. Rex floated beside him, completely at ease, occasionally pushing off from a wall with his paws to adjust his position. "Their shuttle will dock in approximately 20 minutes, Dr. Chang announced, checking the notification on her tablet. The delegation includes their captain, science officer, 2 security personnel, and a cultural specialist. "A small group," noted the Russian cosmonaut who had been assigned as part of the welcoming committee. "They're still being cautious." "Wouldn't you be?" Jake asked. "From their perspective, we're a planet of predator tamers. I'd be cautious too." As they waited for the alien shuttle to dock, Jake ran through the planned demonstrations once more. They would start with basic commands and interactions, showing how the relationship between humans and dogs was based on mutual trust and respect, not dominance or fear. Then they would demonstrate the various working roles dogs held in human society: search and rescue, medical alert, emotional support, service assistance. "Remember," Dr. Chang reminded the team, "we're not trying to convince them that our way is right or superior. We're simply showing them that what they perceived as threatening is actually something quite different. Cultural understanding, not cultural conversion." The station's alert system chimed, indicating that the alien shuttle had begun its final approach to the docking port. Jake took a deep breath and placed his hand on Rex's head, drawing strength from the familiar contact. "Here we go, boy," he murmured. "Time to be ambassadors." The docking procedure went smoothly, the advanced technology of the Federation shuttle interfacing perfectly with the relatively primitive human systems after some initial adjustments. There was a tense moment when the airlock first opened, both sides clearly apprehensive about the encounter. But the station commander stepped forward with empty hands, raised in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "Welcome to Unity Station," she said. Her words translated by the system they had developed based on the Federation's initial communication protocols. "We are honored by your presence and grateful for this opportunity to clear up the misunderstanding that occurred during our first meeting." Captain Zexai emerged first, his crystalline form capturing and refracting the station's lighting in dazzling patterns. He inclined his structure in what appeared to be a formal greeting. "We accept your welcome," he responded. The translation, slightly delayed but clear. "The Federation seeks understanding between all sentient species. We approach this meeting with open minds." The Federation delegation moved cautiously into the station, their movements careful in the unfamiliar gravity conditions. Pipa, the small Furali specialist, appeared particularly affected, her large eyes blinking rapidly as she adjusted to the environment. Jake noticed that she seemed to be the most physically vulnerable of the group, with none of the obvious defensive features of her companions. The station commander led them to the specially prepared chamber, where the main discussions would take place. A transparent barrier divided the room, with environmental systems separated to prevent any potential biological contamination. On the human side, Jake, Dr. Chang, and the other representatives waited, the dogs secured at their sides. Even through the barrier, the reaction of the Federation delegation to the sight of the dogs was visible. The security personnel moved protectively in front of their more vulnerable colleagues, and Dr. Kree's tentacles contracted defensively. But they did not flee as they had during the first encounter. "Before we begin formal discussions," the station commander said, "we would like to demonstrate the true nature of the human-canine relationship. Lieutenant Commander Murphy will provide a basic explanation while interacting with his companion, Rex." Jake stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. Rex remained calmly at his side, seemingly unbothered by the alien observers. "This is Rex," Jake began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "He is a German Shepherd, a breed of domestic dog that has worked alongside humans for hundreds of years. Rex is specifically trained as a service animal and has accompanied me during international peacekeeping missions, where his presence helped establish trust with local populations." He ran through a series of basic commands: sit, stay, come, demonstrating how Rex responded not from fear, but from a desire to cooperate. He showed how reward-based training worked, giving Rex treats and praise for completed tasks. The relationship between humans and dogs began approximately 30,000 years ago, Jake continued, following the script developed by the xenobiologists. It was likely initiated by both species, wolves drawn to human settlements for food, humans recognizing the wolves' value as alarm systems and hunting partners. Over thousands of generations, both species evolved, dogs becoming more attuned to human emotions and commands, humans developing deeper bonds with their canine companions. Through the transparent barrier, Pipa moved closer, her large eyes fixed on Rex. Jake noticed her intense focus and directed his next comments toward her. "What may appear to be dominance is actually partnership. Rex protects me. I protect him. He alerts me to things I might miss. I provide for his needs. The bond between us is based on mutual benefit, trust, and genuine affection." To demonstrate this last point, Jake knelt beside Rex and embraced him. The dog responded by licking his face, a gesture that caused visible alarm among several of the Federation delegates, but seemed to intrigue Pipa even further. Over the next several hours, each of the human-dog teams demonstrated different aspects of the relationship. Dr. Chang showed how Bear provided emotional support to trauma patients. The fire department representative demonstrated how Blaze could locate humans trapped in rubble. The seizure alert dog's handler explained how Stella could detect biochemical changes before a seizure occurred, potentially saving lives. Throughout it all, the Federation delegation observed, occasionally conferring among themselves, but offering little reaction that the humans could interpret. Pipa, however, grew increasingly engaged, moving as close to the barrier as her companions would allow, her large eyes tracking every interaction with scientific intensity. Finally, after all the demonstrations were complete, Captain Zexai addressed the human delegation. "We appreciate the information you have provided," he said, his crystalline structure vibrating in complex patterns. "It is not what we expected. We request time to confer among ourselves and with our superiors." "Of course," the station commander agreed. "The adjacent chamber has been prepared for your private discussions. We will await your response." As the Federation delegation withdrew, Jake exchanged a look with Dr. Chang. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. She shrugged. "Hard to say. Body language across species is nearly impossible to interpret accurately. But they didn't run away this time, so that's progress." In the private chamber, the Federation delegation engaged in intense discussion. Dr. Kree's tentacles moved in agitated patterns as she argued her perspective. The demonstrations were clearly choreographed to present an idealized version of their relationship with these predators, she insisted. "We cannot discount the possibility that they're concealing the more troubling aspects." "Agreed," said one of the Braxian security officers, his armored carapace shifting as he spoke. "The power dynamic remains clear. The humans command. The predators obey. Whether through affection or dominance, the end result is the same. They control creatures evolved to kill." Captain Zexai's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful light patterns. Yet, the biochemical readings Dr. Kree herself recorded show matching hormonal responses in both species, consistent with the bonding patterns Specialist Pipa identified in her research. All eyes turned to Pipa, who had remained unusually quiet since the demonstrations concluded. "Specialist," Captain Zexai prompted, "your analysis." Pipa looked up, her large eyes blinking slowly. "Captain, with your permission, I would like to conduct one additional test. Something less choreographed." "What do you propose?" Zexai asked. "I would like to observe one of these human-canine pairs without specific demonstration parameters. Just being. And I would like to do so without the barrier." The chamber erupted in concerned objections. "Absolutely not. The contamination risk alone. The security implications." Captain Zexai raised a crystalline appendage, silencing the protests. "Explain your reasoning, Specialist." Pipa straightened to her full height, which was still considerably smaller than her colleagues. "Everything we've seen has been carefully presented, selected to show us what the humans want us to see. That's natural in diplomatic contexts. But if we truly want to understand the nature of this relationship, we need to see it in a more natural state." "And the barrier?" Dr. Kree asked. Her tentacles contracted with concern. "Our environmental analysis confirms there are no dangerous pathogens," Pipa said. "The barrier is a psychological division as much as a physical one, and psychology is precisely what we're trying to understand." Captain Zexai considered this, light playing through his crystalline structure in complex patterns. Finally, he turned to the communication system. "We have a request for the human delegation," he announced. "Specialist Pipa wishes to observe a human and canine pair in a less structured interaction, without the barrier. Would this be acceptable?" On the human side, this request prompted a flurry of whispered discussion. Finally, the station commander responded. "We would be amenable to such an arrangement, provided it's conducted with appropriate safety protocols for all involved. Who would you suggest for this observation?" Captain Zexai looked to Pipa, who didn't hesitate. "The male human called Murphy and his companion Rex," she said. "They displayed the most established bond, and the canine showed exceptional calm throughout the demonstrations." And so it was arranged. A section of the transparent barrier would be temporarily opened. Jake and Rex would enter the neutral zone in the center of the chamber, while Pipa would observe from a safe distance. Security personnel from both delegations would stand by, ready to intervene if necessary. As the barrier section slid open, Jake felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about him and Rex anymore. It was about humanity's relationship with a galactic community they were only beginning to understand. "It's okay, boy," he murmured to Rex, who looked up at him with complete trust. "Just be yourself." They moved into the neutral zone, and Jake simply sat cross-legged on the floor. Rex sat beside him, alert but relaxed, occasionally glancing around with mild interest at the unusual environment and beings. Pipa watched from several meters away, her large eyes unblinking. Neither Jake nor Rex made any special effort to perform or demonstrate anything. They simply existed together in the space, occasionally exchanging glances or small gestures of reassurance. After several minutes of this quiet observation, Pipa took a hesitant step forward. Rex's ears perked up with interest, but he remained seated beside Jake. "May I?" Pipa began, her voice soft through the translation system. "May I approach closer?" Jake nodded. "Of course. Rex won't move unless I tell him to, or unless he perceives a threat, which you clearly aren't." Pipa moved closer with the natural caution of a prey species, her evolutionary history evident in every careful movement. When she was about 2 meters away, she stopped again. "He's watching me," she noted, a hint of ancestral fear in her voice. "He's curious," Jake explained. "You're new and interesting. But see his posture? Relaxed ears, soft eyes, no tension in his body. He's not afraid or aggressive, just attentive." Pipa studied Rex with scientific intensity. "The forward-facing eyes. On my world, that means predator." Jake nodded in understanding. "On Earth, too. Dogs evolved from predators. Yes. But that same focused gaze that once tracked prey now watches for signs of human emotion, for commands, for ways to help. The traits that made them successful hunters now make them exceptional companions." Pipa took another cautious step forward. "And you trust him completely? You sleep in the same dwelling? You're never afraid?" Jake smiled. "Rex has saved my life more than once. I trust him more than most humans. We're partners." As if understanding the conversation, Rex looked up at Jake with what could only be described as adoration. The bond between them was palpable, transcending the need for words. Pipa moved closer still, now just a meter away. Rex watched her with gentle interest but made no move toward her. "May I?" She hesitated, then continued. "May I touch him?" Jake considered this. It was a significant step, one that carried both risk and opportunity. "If you'd like to, he won't harm you. I can ask him to lie down first, if that would make you more comfortable." Pipa nodded, and Jake gave Rex the command to lie down. The dog immediately complied, resting his head on his paws in a completely non-threatening posture. With extraordinary courage for a being whose evolutionary history screamed danger at the mere sight of a predator, Pipa extended a slender arm toward Rex. Her hand hovered uncertainly above his head. "Just behind the ears," Jake suggested quietly. "He likes that." Pipa's fingers made contact with Rex's fur, and she flinched slightly, but didn't withdraw. Rex remained perfectly still, allowing the contact without reaction beyond a slight softening of his eyes. "His fur is softer than I expected," Pipa murmured. As she continued the gentle contact, something remarkable happened. Rex, sensing Pipa's lingering anxiety, performed a behavior he often used with traumatized civilians in conflict zones. He slowly, deliberately turned his head away from her, exposing his neck, a universal canine signal of non-aggression. Then he released a soft sigh and closed his eyes. Pipa's own eyes widened in understanding, He's making himself vulnerable. To reassure me. Jake nodded, a lump forming in his throat at the simple wisdom of his canine partner. That's who he is. That's who they are. Not monsters. Not weapons. Just beings with an extraordinary capacity for empathy. For several long moments, the chamber was silent, except for Rex's soft breathing. Then Pipa looked up at Jake, her large eyes reflecting a complex mixture of emotions. I understand now, she said simply. When the observation period ended, both delegations reconvened for further discussion. The atmosphere had changed subtly, but significantly. The Federation representatives still maintained careful distance from the dogs, but the edge of fear had diminished. Captain Zexai addressed the human delegation, his crystalline structure catching the light in complex patterns. Specialist Pipa has shared her observations and analysis with our delegation and with Admiral Korak, he began. Based on this new understanding, the Federation wishes to apologize for our hasty retreat during first contact. We allowed our biological perspectives to cloud our assessment. The station commander inclined her head in acknowledgement. No apology is necessary, Captain. Cross-species understanding is never simple, especially during first meetings. We're grateful for this opportunity to clarify. Nevertheless, Captain Zexai continued, our miscalculation could have led to significant diplomatic complications. We value precision in our assessments, and in this case, we were in error. Dr. Cree moved forward, her tentacles now displaying patterns of scientific interest rather than defensive posturing. The human-canine relationship represents a xenobiological paradigm we haven't previously encountered. Cooperative evolution between predator and prey analog species is rare in our experience. Perhaps that's why it's valuable, Pipa suggested, her voice stronger now. Different evolutionary paths lead to different strengths. The capacity to form bonds across such biological divides suggests possibilities we hadn't considered. Admiral Korak, joining the conversation through the communication system from the Harmonious Accord, pulsed with thoughtful bioluminescence. The Federation Council has reviewed the data and finds this perspective compelling. We propose moving forward with formal diplomatic relations, with appropriate cultural exchange protocols to prevent similar misunderstandings. A ripple of relief passed through the human delegation. The immediate crisis had been averted, and the path to galactic integration now lay open before them. We would be honored, the station commander responded. And we suggest beginning those cultural exchanges with a more relaxed setting than this orbital facility. What do you propose? Admiral Korak asked. Dr. Chang stepped forward. A park on Earth where children play with dogs, under open skies and natural light. No formal presentations, no barriers, just the reality of our daily lives with our canine companions. There was a pause as the Federation representatives considered this. Finally, Captain Zexai's crystalline structure shifted in what appeared to be agreement. An excellent suggestion, he said. Authentic experience rather than diplomatic theater. We accept, with appropriate security provisions. Of course. And so it was decided. The signing of the formal First Contact Treaty between Earth and the Galactic Federation would take place not in a sterile conference room or grand hall, but in a simple park in Colorado, where generations of humans had brought their dogs to play in the sunshine. 2 weeks later, as the diplomatic teams made final preparations for the treaty signing, Jake and Rex took a quiet moment alone on a hilltop overlooking the chosen park. The Federation ships were visible in the evening sky as bright points of light, no longer a source of anxiety but a promise of new horizons. You did good, boy, Jake murmured, scratching behind Rex's ears. Interplanetary diplomat wasn't exactly in your job description, but you handled it like a pro. Rex leaned against his side, a solid, warm presence that had been his constant through war zones, peacekeeping missions, and now humanity's first steps into a larger community. They're not so different from us, are they? Jake continued, gazing up at the distant ships. Different bodies, different evolutionary paths, but the same need for connection, for understanding. Rex looked up at him with those intelligent eyes that had seen humanity at its best and worst, yet somehow maintained an unwavering faith in the bond between their species. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Perfect weather for the historic occasion. The park had been secured, but maintained as natural an appearance as possible. Children played in designated areas. Families walked with their dogs. And the atmosphere was one of celebration rather than formal diplomacy. The Federation delegation arrived in a shuttle that landed gently on a prepared pad at the edge of the park. Captain Sci-Fi led his crew, now expanded to include representatives from several Federation species. Admiral Korak made a rare planet-side appearance, his coral structure housed in a specialized environmental suit. Pipa, now officially appointed as the Federation's first interspecies companion relations specialist, moved with newfound confidence. She approached Jake and Rex with what appeared to be genuine pleasure. "Lieutenant Commander Murphy, Rex," she greeted them, using the proper name for the dog, a sign of respect that wasn't lost on Jake. "It's good to see you in your natural environment." "Just Jake, please," he responded with a smile. "And we're glad you made it planet-side. How does Earth feel to you?" "Heavier than I'm accustomed to," she admitted. "But the air, it carries so many scents. I understand now why olfaction is so important to canines." As they spoke, a young girl approached with her golden retriever puppy bouncing eagerly beside her. She stopped a respectful distance from the alien visitors, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is that a real alien?" she asked Jake, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. Before Jake could respond, Pipa crouched down to the child's level, a universal gesture of friendliness that transcended species. "I am Pipa of the Ferali," she said gently. "And yes, to you, I am an alien, just as you are to me." The girl considered this with the straightforward acceptance of childhood. "Your eyes are really big," she observed. "Like my puppy's." Pipa's large eyes blinked in surprise, then understanding. "Yes, I suppose they are. On my world, we needed to see danger coming from far away." "Can I show you my puppy?" the girl asked. "His name is Buddy. He's still learning his manners." Pipa looked to Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "I would be honored to meet Buddy," she said, as the puppy bounded forward with typical golden retriever enthusiasm. Pipa showed none of the fear that had characterized the first encounter. Instead, she waited patiently as Buddy sniffed her with great interest, his tail wagging in friendly greeting. "He says hello," the girl explained seriously, "with his nose." "Hello, Buddy," Pipa responded, carefully extending a hand as she had seen humans do. The puppy immediately licked her fingers, causing her to emit a sound that the translator couldn't quite capture, something between surprise and delight. This simple interaction, witnessed by both human and Federation observers, set the tone for the day. As the formal treaty signing approached, the park filled with similar moments of connection and discovery. Federation scientists engaged with Earth zoologists about the remarkable diversity of Earth's fauna. Diplomats from both sides found common ground in discussions of ecological preservation and sustainable development. The actual signing ceremony was brief and without excessive formality. The treaty, inscribed on both traditional paper and the crystal data storage preferred by many Federation species, was signed by representatives of Earth's united governments and the Federation Council. Admiral Korak, his choral segments pulsing with ceremonial patterns, addressed the gathered crowd. "Today marks not just the welcome of Earth into the Galactic Federation, but a valuable lesson for all spacefaring species. We came to Earth expecting one reality and discovered another, a reminder that true understanding requires us to look beyond our own evolutionary perspectives." He gestured toward where several children were now playing with their dogs under the watchful eyes of both human and alien observers. What one species sees as a monster, another calls friend. The truth lies not in the shape of teeth or the positioning of eyes, but in the nature of relationships formed. Earth has taught us that bonds of affection and trust can transcend biological categories we once thought immutable. As the ceremony concluded, and the more informal cultural exchange continued, Jake found himself standing beside Pipa, watching as Rex gently allowed a group of alien scientists to examine his fur and ears. "He's quite the diplomat," Pipa observed. Jake smiled. "He always has been. That's the thing about dogs. They judge by actions, not appearances or preconceptions. Maybe that's a lesson all sentient beings could learn." "Indeed," Pipa agreed. "My official report to the Federation Council will emphasize this point. The human-canine bond demonstrates that cooperation between biologically diverse species isn't just possible. It's potentially advantageous to both." As the sun began to set over the park, casting long shadows across the grass, Jake watched the mingling of species that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. Federation delegates cautiously petting therapy dogs. Human children asking endless questions about alien biology. Scientists from both worlds engaged in animated discussions about coevolution and symbiosis. To aliens, they're monsters. To humans, they're good boys, Jake mused, echoing a phrase that had become something of a diplomatic inside joke. But maybe the truth is, they're bridge builders, helping us see past our differences to what connects us. Rex, as if understanding the weight of the moment, pressed against Jake's leg in a gesture as old as their shared history, a simple affirmation of the bond between them. Jake placed his hand on the dog's head, feeling the familiar warmth and steadiness that had carried him through countless challenges. In that quiet moment, as Earth took its first steps into a broader galactic community, Jake recognized that humanity's oldest friendship had opened the door to countless new ones. The journey that had begun thousands of years ago when the first wolf approached a human campfire now extended to the stars themselves, a testament to the power of trust, cooperation, and the universal language of companionship. To aliens, they might once have seemed like monsters. To humans, they would always be good boys. But to the galaxy at large, dogs had become something even more significant. Proof that even the widest evolutionary gulfs could be bridged by something as simple and as profound as friendship.